Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into the world of drug discovery, but not the kind you might picture with scientists in lab coats and bubbling liquids.
No bubbling liquids today.
Exactly. We're going digital and taking a deep dive into this fascinating scientific paper all about an AI system called LIDDIA, short for Language-Based Intelligent Drug Discovery Agent. Now, I know what you might be thinking, AI making drugs. It sounds like a sci-fi movie, right?
A little bit.
But hold on, because this is real and potentially revolutionary. Imagine having a digital twin of like a brilliant chemist working tirelessly day and night to discover new medicines. That's essentially what LIDDIA aims to do. And joining me today to unpack all this is an expert in AI and drug discovery. Welcome to the deep dive.
Thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here, and I'm really excited to break down how this technology works.
So let's start with the basics. Drug discovery is notoriously slow, expensive, and complex. It's like searching for a tiny, specific grain of sand on a massive beach blindfolded.
Oh, that's a good one.
What makes LIDDIA different, and why are scientists so excited about it?
Well, imagine if you could take off the blindfold, and instead of randomly searching, you had a map that told you exactly where to find that grain of sand. That's kind of what LIDDIA does. It uses AI to streamline and accelerate the whole process of finding potential new drugs.
Okay, that's a really helpful analogy, but how does it actually work? The paper describes LIDDIA as having four main components: the reasoner, the executor, the evaluator, and the memory. These names sound like something straight out of like a superhero comic.
They do, don't they? But they actually make a lot of sense when you think about how a human chemist works. So the reasoner, as you might guess, is like the brain of the system. It analyzes data, it plans experiments, it figures out what to try next based on what it's already learned.
So it's not just blindly throwing chemicals together. There's actual thought and strategy involved.
Exactly. And then we have the executor, which is like the hands. It carries out the tasks that the reasoner has planned, using various computational tools to actually design and manipulate the molecules.
Okay, so we've got a brain, we've got some hands. What about the other two components?
Ah, yes. The evaluator acts like the critical eye of a scientist. It's constantly assessing the molecules being created, judging whether they're likely to be effective and safe. Think of it as the quality control department, making sure only the best candidates move forward.
Okay, that makes sense. It really sounds like this AI system is trying to replicate the entire scientific process. But what about the memory? Where does that fit in?
The memory is LIDDIA's way of keeping track of everything it's done and learned. It's like a giant digital lab notebook storing all the data from past experiments so the reasoner can learn from it and make better decisions in the future.
So LIDDIA is not just doing things randomly, it's learning and getting smarter as it goes. That's pretty amazing.
Absolutely. That's what makes LIDDIA so powerful. It's constantly evolving and improving its abilities, much like a human scientist would gain experience over time.
This all sounds very impressive, but I have to admit I'm still a bit fuzzy on how it actually finds these potential new drugs. The paper mentions something called generative AI, which just sounds incredibly futuristic. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. Imagine you're not limited to just searching a library for an existing book. Instead, you can write the exact thing you need, tailored to fit a specific purpose. That's the power of generative AI in drug discovery.
Wow, that's a fantastic way to explain it. So instead of just looking through existing molecules, LIDDIA is actually creating new ones from scratch.
Precisely.
That's wild.
It uses its knowledge of chemistry and biology, along with the data in its memory, to generate completely new molecules specifically designed to target a particular disease.
That's incredible. It really sounds like this generative AI is a game changer for drug discovery. But how do we know if it actually works? The paper mentions some specific examples of LIDDIA's performance, and they're pretty mind-blowing. For instance, they tested LIDDIA on 30 different clinically relevant targets. These are like the bullseyes for drug development, specific proteins involved in various diseases. And get this, LIDDIA created potential drug candidates for over 70% of them. That seems like a huge success rate, right?
Oh, absolutely. To put that in perspective, traditional drug discovery often has success rates in the single digits. So 70% is a truly remarkable leap forward.
That's incredible. It's finding more potential drugs, and it's finding them faster than traditional methods. But what's even more impressive is that LIDDIA was creating molecules that were better in some ways than those found in existing databases or even designed by humans.
Yes, it's really pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible in drug design. But I think what's most exciting is not just the speed and efficiency, but the potential to discover entirely new classes of drugs that we might never have found using traditional methods.
That's a great point. It's not just about doing what we already do faster, but about opening up new possibilities that we hadn't even considered. Okay, I'm officially hooked. But I have to ask, how does LIDDIA actually do it? How does it find these amazing molecules?
Let's take an example from the paper to make it a bit more concrete. They talk about how LIDDIA was used to find potential drug candidates for CDK5, a protein that's linked to Alzheimer's disease.
Okay, so a real-world example of how this AI could help tackle a major health challenge. Walk us through it.
Well, first, LIDDIA uses its generative AI to create a bunch of brand new molecules, each one designed to fit the specific structure of CDK5, like a key fitting a lock.
So it's creating custom-designed molecules from scratch based on the specific disease it's targeting.
Exactly. But it doesn't stop there. It then goes through a process of optimization, tweaking those molecules to make them even better. Imagine a sculptor refining a statue, carefully chiseling away imperfections to create a masterpiece.
So LIDDIA is like a master sculptor meticulously crafting these molecules to be as effective as possible.
That's a great way to think about it. And finally, LIDDIA screens these optimized molecules to weed out the ones that aren't likely to be effective or safe. It's like a rigorous quality control process, ensuring that only the most promising candidates make it through.
It sounds like LIDDIA learns from its mistakes and gets smarter with each try. It's almost as if it's developed its own intuition about what works and what doesn't.
That's a fascinating way to put it. And you're right, that iterative learning process is key to LIDDIA's success. It's constantly adapting and improving based on the data it gathers, just like a human scientist would.
This is truly incredible. And the paper also mentions a case study about EGFR, which is a key target for cancer treatment. Can you tell us a little bit more about what happened there?
Sure. EGFR is a protein found on the surface of many types of cancer cells, and it plays a crucial role in their growth and spread. Existing drugs that target EGFR have been successful in treating some cancers, but they often face challenges with drug resistance, which is when the cancer cells find ways to evade the drug's effects.
So finding new and better ways to target EGFR is crucial for developing more effective cancer treatments, especially for those who have developed resistance to existing therapies.
Absolutely. And what's remarkable is that LIDDIA was able to generate molecules that not only bound to EGFR even better than the molecule that naturally activates it, but also showed potential to be more effective than existing drugs. This could potentially lead to new and improved cancer treatments, especially for drug-resistant cancers.
This is truly groundbreaking. We're talking about potentially life-saving advancements here.
It's certainly a reason to be optimistic about the future of medicine.
But I'm sure there are also challenges and limitations to consider. We'll delve into those in the next part of our deep dive and explore what LIDDIA's success might tell us about the future of drug discovery. Stay with us.
You know, it's easy to get swept up in all the excitement of a new technology like LIDDIA. I mean, the potential benefits are really mind-boggling.
Oh, I'm right there with you. I'm practically bouncing off the walls here. But you're right. We should also take a moment to consider the challenges, the potential downsides. After all, no technology is a magic bullet, right?
Exactly. And one of the biggest things to consider with any new drug, whether it's discovered by AI or by traditional methods, is safety.
Of course, safety is paramount. We don't want to rush into using a new drug without being absolutely sure it's not going to cause harm.
Right. And that's where things get a little tricky. Even though LIDDIA is incredibly sophisticated, it's still working with computer models. It designs molecules based on our current understanding of biology and chemistry, which is constantly evolving.
So even with all its intelligence, LIDDIA is still limited by our own knowledge gaps. There might be things we don't yet know about how a particular molecule will behave in a living organism.
Precisely. The human body is incredibly complex, and there's always the possibility of unforeseen side effects or interactions that we haven't anticipated.
That makes sense. So it's not just about whether LIDDIA can design a molecule that binds to a target protein. It's also about whether that molecule will actually work as a drug in a living, breathing person.
Exactly. And that's where rigorous testing comes in. Before any LIDDIA-designed drug could be made available to the public, it would need to go through extensive testing in the lab and then in clinical trials with human volunteers.
So even though LIDDIA is speeding up that initial discovery phase, the process of bringing a new drug to market is still going to be long and complex.
Absolutely. There are no shortcuts when it comes to ensuring the safety and efficacy of a new drug. And this is where the expertise of human scientists, pharmacologists, toxicologists, clinicians is still absolutely essential.
So LIDDIA might be the star quarterback, but it still needs a whole team of experts to win the game.
perfect analogy. And there are other challenges to consider as well. For example, even if LIDDIA designs a fantastic new drug, there are still manufacturing challenges to overcome. Can we produce it on a large scale? Is it stable enough to be stored and transported? These are all things we have to consider.
Right, those are important practical considerations. And then there's a question of cost. New drugs are often incredibly expensive, making them inaccessible to many people who need them.
Absolutely. Cost and accessibility are major factors that need to be addressed. We don't want a situation where only the wealthy can afford the benefits of these AI-driven discoveries.
It sounds like there are a lot of hurdles to overcome before we start seeing LIDDIA design drugs in our pharmacies.
There are, and we need to be realistic about that. But even with these challenges, I think LIDDIA's success is incredibly encouraging. It shows us what's possible when we combine human ingenuity with the power of artificial intelligence.
I agree. It's an exciting time to be alive, and it feels like we're on the cusp of a major revolution in medicine. But let's go back to the paper for a moment. It mentions that other AI systems and even traditional drug discovery methods have faced some significant challenges. What makes LIDDIA different? How has it been able to overcome those hurdles?
I think a few factors contribute to LIDDIA's remarkable success. First, there's the power of generative AI, which we talked about earlier. This ability to create entirely new molecules, rather than just tweaking existing ones, opens up a vast universe of possibilities.
So it's like LIDDIA is exploring uncharted territory in the world of molecules rather than just sticking to the well-trodden paths.
Exactly. And second, LIDDIA's capacity for learning and adapting is crucial. It's not just following a rigid set of instructions, it's constantly evaluating the results of its experiments and adjusting its approach accordingly.
So it's more like a flexible and creative scientist than a mindless machine.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. And finally, I think the way LIDDIA is structured, with its 4 interconnected components, the reasoner, executor, evaluator, and memory, really allows it to mimic the thought process of a human scientist in a way that other systems haven't been able to achieve.
It's almost as if they've managed to capture the essence of scientific intuition and creativity in an algorithm. That's pretty remarkable.
It really is, and I think that's what makes LIDDIA so promising. It's not just a brute force approach. It's a system that can actually think like a chemist, making connections and decisions based on a deep understanding of the underlying science.
Well, I'm definitely convinced that LIDDIA has the potential to be a game changer, but as you said earlier, it's still early days. What are you most excited to see happen next with this technology? Where do we go from here?
I think the most immediate next step is to see how LIDDIA performs on an even wider range of targets. The 30 targets they tested in this paper are just the tip of the iceberg. There are thousands of potential drug targets out there, representing a vast array of diseases.
So we need to see if LIDDIA can replicate its success across a broader spectrum of health challenges.
Exactly. And I'm also curious to see how LIDDIA can be further refined and improved. For example, can we integrate even more sophisticated safety checks into the evaluator? Can we develop new tools for the executor that allow it to access an even wider range of chemistry?
It's like LIDDIA is a brilliant student who's just starting to tap into their potential. I can't wait to see what they accomplish next.
Me too. And I think it's not just about LIDDIA itself, it's about what its success tells us about the future of AI and drug discovery. I think we're just beginning to scratch the surface of what's possible.
That's a great point. LIDDIA is a fascinating case study, but it also opens up a whole world of questions about the future of science in general. How will AI change the way we approach research and discovery? How will it impact the role of human scientists?
These are profound questions, and I don't think we have all the answers yet. But I'm confident that AI will play an increasingly important role in developing new and innovative treatments for diseases that have plagued humanity for centuries.
It's an exciting and challenging time to be working in science and medicine. So much is changing so rapidly, and the possibilities seem almost limitless. But speaking of possibilities, I think it's time for our final thought of the day, something to leave our listeners pondering as we wrap up this part of our deep dive. If LIDDIA can create molecules that are potentially better than those designed by humans, what does that tell us about the limits of our own creativity?
That's a deep one. And I think it gets to the heart of what makes AI so fascinating and potentially disruptive.
It's both exhilarating and a little bit unnerving to think that we might be on the verge of creating machines that can surpass us in creativity, something we've long considered a uniquely human trait. But maybe it's not about being surpassed, but about collaboration.
I like that perspective. Perhaps the future of science lies in a partnership between human and artificial intelligence, each leveraging their unique strengths to solve the world's most pressing problems.
It's a tantalizing thought, and one that we'll have to continue exploring as these technologies continue to evolve. But for now, we'll leave our listeners with that thought-provoking question. We've been talking about LIDDIA and its potential to, revolutionize drug discovery, but let's zoom out for a moment and think about what this all means for, everyday people, for those of us who don't spend our days thinking about molecules and algorithms.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's easy to get lost in the technical details, but ultimately what matters most is how this technology will impact, people's lives.
Exactly. So let's get down to brass tacks. What could LIDDIA's success actually mean for the average person, say, in the next 5 to 10 years? What kind of changes might we actually see in the real world?
Well, for starters, I think we can expect to see new and more effective treatments for diseases that currently have very limited options. Think Alzheimer's disease, certain types of cancer, even rare genetic disorders. Conditions that have really stumped scientists for decades might suddenly become treatable.
That would be incredible, to have hope where there was none before. It's hard to even overstate the impact that would have on individuals and families facing these, devastating illnesses.
Absolutely. And it's not just about, new treatments. LIDDIA could also lead to better versions of existing drugs. Imagine medications with fewer side effects, greater efficacy, or more convenient dosing schedules. It could significantly improve the quality of life for millions of people managing chronic conditions.
That's a fantastic point. It's not always about finding a cure. Sometimes it's about making life easier and more comfortable for those living with a disease.
Exactly. And beyond individual patients, LIDDIA's success could have a really profound impact on the healthcare system as a whole. If AI can make drug discovery faster and more efficient, it could potentially lead to lower drug prices, making life-saving treatments more accessible to more people around the world.
That would be a game changer. Access to affordable healthcare is a major issue globally, so the possibility of AI driving down those costs is incredibly exciting.
It certainly is. But like we discussed earlier, there are also potential downsides that we need to be aware of and address, proactively.
You're talking about the ethical implications that we touched on before.
Exactly. As AI becomes increasingly powerful, we need to make sure that it's used responsibly and ethically. For example, how do we prevent bias from creeping into these algorithms, ensuring that they benefit all populations equally?
That's a crucial point. We can't let AI exacerbate existing health disparities. It's essential that we develop clear guidelines and regulations for its use in healthcare.
I agree. And then there's the question of access and control. Who owns this technology? Who gets to decide how it's used? And who benefits from it? These are really complex questions that we need to grapple with as a society.
It's clear that LIDDIA's success raises as many questions as it answers, but I think that's a good thing. It's forcing us to confront some really fundamental issues about the role of technology in our lives and the future of healthcare.
I couldn't agree more. This is just the beginning of a very important conversation, and I'm really excited to see how it unfolds.
Well, I have to say this has been a truly mind-expanding deep dive. We've gone from the nitty-gritty of molecule design to the philosophical implications of artificial intelligence, and I think we've all learned a lot along the way.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure diving deep with you and our listeners.
And to our listeners, if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed by all of this, don't worry, that's totally normal. The key is to stay curious, keep asking those questions, and engage in these important conversations about the future of technology and healthcare.
Well said. The future is being shaped right now, and we all have a role to play in making sure that AI is used for the betterment of humanity.
And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of AI-driven drug discovery. We hope you've enjoyed the journey, and we'll be back soon with another deep dive into a fascinating corner of knowledge.
Until then, keep exploring and stay curious.
And keep diving deep.